Hey everyone, it's LS, and this is going to be the patch 8.14 notes rundown. It's been a while since we did a rundown, so I'm hoping to see some big changes that are going to affect the meta inside of this patch. So we'll see what ends up happening here. First up is Aatrox. So this is a champion that you don't let through. He is able to be flexed into multiple roles, predominantly mostly in mid and top lane. He's been essentially permabanned by the red team, and anytime that he is let through, Havoc just breaks loose, and he's extremely strong, extremely oppressive, and even his scaling into the mid and later stages of the game is just absolutely insane when you compare what he can do relative to other champions. So anyways, general, apparently you can now switch his stance with Control 5. That's called base stats. He is losing 30 HP. So essentially he's losing an auto attack, which, you know, every time this happens, it is noticeable. It is something that you definitely do feel to a certain extent in lane. But the problem is that he's so impressive in lane, and you often can't trade against him that, well, yes, it's a healthy nerf. It's not something that I think that is going to impact stuff, because normally you can't actually get near Aatrox without your jungler. There's some laners that can actually go toe-to-toe with him very early on, but really that's if Aatrox ends up making a mistake, or if you can somehow get the leg up on him before he can get level 2 for some reason, or if he messes up with his Qs, then you can open up and have a nice trade window against him. But outside of that, it really takes Aatrox to mess up for you to really be able to utilize this 30 HP deficit, or 30 HP being removed from him without your jungler present. Q, the Darkened Blade, base damage is reduced by 10 at all ranks. So I don't know the exact math on this because I'm just looking at it for the first time, but I don't think it's going to impact him too much. The sweet spot damage is unchanged. Damage to minions 65% to 100% scaling to 50% to 100% scaling. It's okay because Aatrox often overkills minions anyway. This sort of a small damage reduction isn't going to affect him if you've played him or been able to get him at least. If he's not banned in your solo queue games, then you know what I'm talking about, where he tends to overkill minions anyway. Obviously, this change doesn't impact monsters, so it doesn't affect Aatrox just running over to Scuttlecrab or the Raptor camps and taking those really quick. But I'm going to get back to the Darkened Blade change in a little bit. Umbral Dash, 20 to 12 seconds, is changed to 24 to 8 seconds. So they're giving you some time, or there's a timing now to trade against him that is definitely going to be more favorable for you. What this ends up doing is that Aatrox will basically be the same exact Aatrox at, I think, level 10? Level 10. Yeah, level 10 is going to be the same Aatrox, and then his late game is actually buffed. So this is actually really interesting, because one of the things that you can do against him in the later stages of the game is try to play around a messed up Q. But because he's often gated by the E Umbral Dash, so often his first Q has to be cast normally. The second and third Q, if you really want to maximize the damage, especially if you have your R active, is where the Umbral Dashes are going to be given. The reason that this is quite a big buff is because you're shaving 4 seconds off it. This is really, really massive. So then when we look at World Ender, bonus attack damage 20% total AD to 20 to 25% total attack damage. This is a massive buff for him. So the total attack damage change, when you swing it all the way back into the Darkened Blade and you factor in the Umbral Dash and what it means for him getting in extra auto attacks and whatnot, and then pausing the Apocalypse, Q recast timer is now frozen while reviving. These are all actually buffs. So in an interesting way, Riot is coming in hot with another Zoe 0.25 nerf, and that's basically the same caliber of change that we're experiencing here on Aatrox, but in a more interesting way where nothing too dramatic is actually being hit. And what this might end up doing is people might make the mistake of letting Aatrox through now in solo queue, and then you can just claim a lot of LP. He's buffed mid and late game, which is just really obnoxious. I don't know why they took this route. I'm really actually surprised to see that the R cooldown changes didn't fully go through. I saw that maybe they were entertaining that on the PBE. I really think that what they should have done is gut his damage more early, and I think the change with the E is good early. I think the damage needed to be gutted more, maybe something with his passive, maybe even something with his sustain. Should have been hit a little bit. Make it scale all the way back up, because honestly that's one of the more oppressive parts as well about his kit. So really I'm liking this because maybe people let him through now, but that's pretty much it. Fizz, W no longer deals bonus magic damage against prime targets. W base damage increased. W now grants on-hit damage if empowered attack does not kill its target. WC Stone Trident. So 20 to 60 plus 0.4 ability power scaling to 40 to 80 plus 0.4 ability power scaling. So the important thing to note here about the W change is I believe that, I know that there has been some differences between regions when picking Fizz, but I think historically Asian teams would always max E. Asian Fizz players would almost always max E. And then in the West, there was some differences with Q and W, but then when Fizz got the mini rework or the change, there was a point where W was being put to 3 points, and then you would max E, or some people just outright max W. The interesting thing here is that for the E-max Fizzes, this is a lot better. You have a lot more oomph inside of your trading, but aside from that, Fizz is held back by other problems that don't pertain to Fizz's ability to blow you up in lane. Everyone knows that Fizz can blow you up in lane. All of these things being damage buff on non-kill, 10 to 30 scaling, plus 0.3 ability power. W's passive bleed no longer applies to targets Fizz passes through during Q, so this is something that was very hard to make use of anyway, so I'm not going to really cause too much of a fuss over that. I think Fizz is gated by other problems. I think that the changes that happened to the AP items a very, very, very long time ago that some people might remember, you know, most notably, it helped in hurting champions like Viktor, not just the Hex Core change, but he was hurt by that. There was a lot of mages that were hurt by those changes, even though, interestingly enough, it was supposed to support them or, you know, be helpful for them. Fizz's itemization path and the way that Fizz needs to scale into the game in a competitive setting is extremely difficult. And in coordinated settings, Fizz doesn't have the same luxury as some other champions with being able to actually get access to the enemy team without having to rely on his teammates in order to set it up for him. Because of the itemization and because of the reliance on the ultimate and the actives like Zhonya's Hourglass or Proto Belt, or actually being able to get to Lich Bane and stuff, Fizz just has all these other problems that doesn't really pertain to the kit. It has to do with the itemization currently inside of the meta, especially because there has been so much access given to mages and AD champions in the mid lane to itemize well against a champion like Fizz. And then obviously all the changes that have occurred over the course of like the last year with resistances and whatnot. It hurt Fizz a lot. It doesn't mean that Fizz isn't still good in solo queue, absolutely. But in a competitive setting, don't expect to see these type of changes magically make Fizz pop up, unless it is going to be an extremely, extremely specific counter pick versus a very specific team. Even then, I really doubt that we're going to see Fizz pop up like that. So let's just move on. Jinx, base health increased, health gross decreased. Okay, so gets 50 HP at level 1, but then in the end ends up losing HP at level 18. So, okay. I believe that they actually do this to another champion. Karma base mana regen increased, growth decreased, base armor increased, Q splash radius increased, empowered detonation damage decreased to early ranks. Okay. Mana regen 8.5 per 5 to 11.5 mana per 5 seconds. Mana regen growth 0.8 mana to 0.5. I mean, that's fine. Base armor, she gets... What? That doesn't seem right. She gets 5.6 armor at level 1. Q inner flame splash radius is actually up by 30. Soulflare detonation damage 50 to 350 scaling to 30 to 350 scaling. So the thing here is that you're going to end up maxing Q. So at level 5, you're only actually losing 5... Oh, I'm sorry. This is the enhance. Oh. Okay. Well, that's gonna be awkward, actually. I mean, the trade-off, obviously, at the very, very end is definitely worth it. The problem is that is Karma actually fit to be in the meta? The armor thing actually incentivizes, like, the top tank Karma, but it's not something that's miraculously just going to make that viable. The other thing, when you do stuff like change the mana up, this only really affects the first recall, if anything, because after that, high MMR players and pros are definitely able to manage their mana, and these type of changes aren't dramatic enough to make it so that Karma's just going to be able to spam without even having to think about it. So In that regard, I don't think this is actually going to really do anything. This will be felt in bottom lane. Obviously, support Karma players would like these changes quite a lot because it's just about making sure that you get your poke off and hitting it. The damage is obviously nice, but obviously having the sustain via the armor is going to be good too. Sion Q-base damage and Q-base damage and damage ratio increased at later ranks. Sion ended up falling out of the meta actually not too long ago, and that was just primarily because anti-tanks became very, well, Darius came up there, Mundo basically did what Sion did but better, Ornn is a champion. There's just a lot of reasons why Sion's not fitting currently in the meta, and I don't think that we'll actually see Sion make a return unless it ends up becoming like a flavor of the month because people get bored of top lane champions, or if the meta dramatically shifts in the mid and jungle to be extremely AP heavy, and then you need an AD focused tank coming from the top lane. So don't expect to magically see Sion come back just because of these changes, because there's so many other things gating him right now. Twitch, base health increased, health growth. So this is the same thing that happened to Jinx. This is really interesting that they target Jinx and Twitch with this. I do think that Twitch is actually probably on the better end of this change than Jinx is. So take that for what it's worth. Mid-patch 8.3 updates. We're not going to go over those. That's okay. Ahri, E mana cost decreased, E charm duration increased early. Cost 85 mana to 70 mana, so 15. I mean, I don't know how many times we're going to actually end up casting this in lane. Maybe you'll cast it 4 times, in which case you can almost view it like you're getting a free extra charm off. Charm duration 1 to 2 second scaling to 1.4 to 2 second scaling. Now that is actually really, really big because I think that it means that you can obviously weave in an extra auto attack now, especially at the early ranks. So you have to be able to convert that into the damage. And then obviously at later stages, because Ahri is not maxing charm, this is really, really big for setting up 2v2s. It's going to be big in 3v3s, and obviously this is going to have definitely an impact in the mid stages of the game around like dragon fights and whatnot. Do I think that it magically makes Ahri come back into the game? No, and I'm going to talk about maybe why that's not going to be the case for other reasons. And again, it's not about Ahri herself. There's other stuff holding Ahri back from coming in, sort of just like Sion. The way that the mid laners are right now and the way that the meta is there are other champions that can offer more than what she can, and she's still, she's a champion that you would actually think is a blind pickable champion, but in the reality, she's not, because there's too many champions that are very good against her, even though she has a pretty standard, safe, generic kit. There's too many ways to just punish her. So, with that being said, Cassiopeia, Q-base damage increased late, Q damage ratio increased. So she ends up getting an extra 20 damage at rank 5 on her Noxious Blast. Ability power ratio is up by 0.10. Cassio is one of those champions that can definitely get up into the high AP numbers. What this might end up meaning is that her Q ends up dealing like an extra 60 to 80 damage on average. And while that is noticeable, you have to basically factor that into a team fight and where's the majority of her damage coming in. And yeah, it will be noticeable and it will be felt, but Cassio will definitely require other champions to be present in the meta, and that's actually a theme that we're having with a lot of these buffs and nerfs that we're seeing in this patch. So, Elise, base stats. Health growth is actually up by 8 per level, so she's actually getting a Ruby Health Crystal, which is definitely nice. Nasus passive lifesteal increased early, Soul Eater. He gets an extra 2% at level 1. That's great. You're still not a good champion. Pantheon, bonus attack speed at level... Oh, actually, you know what? Let me re-comment on this. Nasus isn't good right now because... I'm going to say it again, because of the meta. It's very hard to fit him in. There's other champions that can do what he does, but better. They can have a higher impact in the mid game, which is where Nasus tends to spike. And Nasus is a champion that is only often going to be picked as a counter pick against a very, very specific team composition. So with all of that in mind, he has other problems that are gating him than having 2% lifesteal extra at level 1. Because you have to really factor in how much is 2%. On his Qs and his auto attacks early on. And what does that really mean for Nasus? Does this eventually convert into an extra auto attack? Because that's not what's holding him back in laning phase. That's not why we're not seeing him pop up. I'll say it for you because I know you all love it. Placebo. Pantheon. Bonus attack speed. Level 1 added. W base damage increase. So, this is really cool. And the reason that it's really cool is because Pantheon will often end up taking like Electrocute and then going into Sorcery, so he loses out on the attack speed that the Precision Tree would grant or whatever. So he ends up getting some love there. W Aegis of I'm not going to try. 50 to 150 scaling to 60 to 160 scaling. Getting an extra 10 damage added onto that is actually quite nice. Obviously, it's going to be felt most by top lane and mid lane Pantheon. I'm sure that Keegan is having the time of his life with this minor buff here, because it can add up to 20 or 30 damage, obviously, before factoring in resistances in laning phase, and that is quite noticeable. Not sure if this factors into a Scuttle Crab clear at any point, on like specific damage, depending on how you cast your spears or your auto attacks, so I'm not sure there. Most likely is never going to have an impact on clearing a camp. And then inside of ganks, it's basically like a minion auto attack the opponent once for you, so that's how you have to look at it. Rek'Sai, Q and R damage ratio increase 0.4 bonus AD to 0.5, and then Prey Seeker as well, and then Void Rush gets 0.15 bonus attack damage. So obviously, they are trying to incentivize Rek'Sai to go for the AD route, maybe with the Warrior and the Black Cleaver. I mean, obviously, you can still potentially just go Cinderhulk, Black Cleaver, and then go from there. Rek'Sai is interesting to get buffed. When I think about the meta right now and a lot of the jungler champions, there is room for Rek'Sai to potentially come back. Do I think these changes will necessarily make her come back? I'm not entirely sure. And the reason that I say that is because of the mobility and also just the sheer strength of some of the mid lane champions right now and where you would think that Rek'Sai fits into some of the 2-on-2 pairs. Obviously, Galio is really popular right now, and Rek'Sai is going to have some synergy there. When you think of all the popular junglers right now, you think of Talia, you think of Kindred, you think of Graves, you think of Xin, and then you think about how Rek'Sai fares off against some of them, and where does Rek'Sai end up standing there? Obviously, some of the tank junglers like Gragas, which is making a comeback, Sejuani has bit the dust. There's still Skarner, and like even the tank junglers that are still existing actually have pretty good matchups against Rek'Sai. So you have to factor all of this in instead of just looking at it like, oh, Rek'Sai's getting a lot of AD. Sivir, Q cooldown decreased, Boomerang Blade, 9 seconds to 7 seconds. Sivir is the epitome of a champion that only shows up when it's absolutely necessary. This is basically like fucking Batman or something. Sivir appears as an answer to a meta. She is not a defining factor inside of a meta. Her kit, the way that she operates, the team comp she fits into, she does not define the meta. She comes in as an anti-meta pick traditionally. And with that being said, having 2 seconds shaved off of her Q boomerang, but also the spot that some of the crit ADCs are in right now, a lot of people had speculated that Sivir would be good with the new Infinity Edge and other stuff like that. The problem is that the way that the games are right now, the emphasis on 1-item spikes or 1.5 items, 2 items, the way that the team comps are so durable and tanky, but also how quickly the fights can unfold, Sivir doesn't really fit into that. You look at a lot of the ADCs right now popping up in bottom lane that aren't just the bruisers. You're looking at stuff like Ezreal, you're looking at Kai'Sa, you're looking at Lucian, and then you ask yourself, where does Sivir really fit in? These type of changes, which, yes, they have an effect, yes, you can feel this in early laning phase, but the real strength of this would come a lot later on into the game, especially in stalemate scenarios, where poke is going to be a really strong factor in deciding a team fight or trying to whittle down the enemy team, and you're not going to get access to that. Q, ratio increased on Vel'Koz. This is my favorite change of the patch. 0.6 ability power to 0.8 ability power. Vel'Koz is a champion. I think he's actually one of the most difficult champions in the entire game. And so, with that being said, I also feel like he's under-researched. And I feel like he is already currently viable. I know that we're starting to see him be picked. I think actually he was just picked recently. And when you look at Vel'Koz and when you think about the sheer amount of mechanics and then just everything required to play him at a competitive level, but then the reward that you get if you can manage to do that is really, really good. I think that giving him 0.2 ability power is really scary, especially because it's on his Q, and that's obviously his most spammable ability. I think this incentivizes people to further look at Vel'Koz, and maybe this will end up actually meaning that people pick him up. I do think that he's worthy of being picked up, and I also like the fact that because of the way the meta is right now, there is even some potency to flex him into the ADC role. So I like the change to Vel'Koz. Vayne, W damage increased late. Okay, 4-2, like, what? Can we just add? There's something about this that's making me feel uncomfortable. This just doesn't sound right, okay? It rolls off the tongue and it leaves me feeling very uncomfortable. This is like waking up in the middle of a night after going home with someone and you realize that the bed is empty and they've left. That's just how this feels after I read the silver bullets. 4-12% of the maximum health of the target to 4-14%. Great, you're still terrible. Vi, base attack speed increased. R cooldown decreased. Base attack speed 0.625 to 0.644. I don't actually know how this affects her clears, so I'm super sorry. R assault and battery. So normally you'll hear me talk about cooldowns and how when Riot ends up bringing the cooldowns down, that it doesn't actually mean that much for a lot of champions. Vi is one of the exceptions. Vi is a champion that is so terrible on her own that without the R key, you often wonder why did you pick her. With that being said, the R key is her defining factor, and obviously inside of the jungle, that's all that you're looking to do. Every single time your R is up, you're ready to go. It's basically on par with Nocturne, and so this is a pretty noticeable change for her. Is it going to make her come back in the current meta competitively? Absolutely not. Is it going to help her inside of solo queue? Is Super Metroid going to climb higher on the ladder? Probably. All right, now let's get to, I mean, I can't believe they did this, you know? I mean, I just, I don't even know what we owe them for this. I can't believe that Riot just lost their fucking minds when they decided to give Viktor 100 cast range on his gravity field. What are they thinking? They're just trying to break mid lane with this. Zoe 0.25 doesn't hold a fucking candle to this. Oh my god. No, but honestly, I mean, what are they thinking? This is some sick joke. I don't know what to say. There's someone at the table that's like, all right, they're like going down the list of champions and they're like, all right, Vel'Koz, Veigar, oh yes, yeah, Viktor, yeah. Oh, what can we do to buff him? And the guy raises his fucking hand. He's like, well, we could give his gravity field 100 range. And he's like, yeah, I would have gotten that kill if it had 100 more range last time. I'm like, brilliant. That'll certainly bring him back into the meta. When you see stuff like Viktor, and you see stuff like Fizz, and you see stuff like Zoe 0.25, and you see stuff like Aatrox getting buffed when he has a 100% ban rate, you have to really wonder, what are the conversations that are being brought up at the round table? What is really going on there? You would think at this point, especially because they're so willing to do micro patches, right? They're so willing to do mid patches. Can you just give this fucking champion some goddamn damage? And if he gets out of hand, then you just tune it down a little. It doesn't take much effort. How about you revert his hex core? Maybe you just revert the hex core. Maybe you give Viktor a little bit more damage inside of his E. Maybe you make his second E feel rewarding to hit. Maybe, here's a crazy idea, targets affected by gravity field take enhanced damage. Maybe make his Chaos Storm not suck dick. Maybe actually change the champion that was dominating and everyone liked to see about a year ago. Then there's going to come the people that are like, no, the Azir Viktor meta was one of the worst ever. No, it wasn't. It was the two kings of mid lane. And it was so awesome when Talia came and interrupted them and brought everything crumbling down. And then the mid meta revolutionized. And then the... God, makes me so tilted. Dr. Mundo, Q health refund decreased. This is noticeable. This is actually very, very... I think this is the most balanced change that we've gotten to thus far. This is beautiful. This is not a simple nerf. This is a perfect nerf. I would say this is like perfect nerf. Very reasonable number, totally understandable. He's in a great spot, not gonna break him, not gonna just great. I actually really like that. Rakan, Q cooldown increased late, R cooldown increased. Gleaming Quill, 12 to 6 seconds scaling to 12 to 8 seconds. Not going to break Rakan because he's doing the same exact thing early on, and then late game you're not sitting there going, man, I wish I had the 2 seconds back on Gleaming Quill. R, the quickness, 120 seconds to 130 to 90. He's not a champion. Again, we just talked about Vi. He is not like Vi. You do not have R and then be like, guys, we gotta go, I have R. It's not how this works, okay? You're not fucking quick to use R, all right? So, anyways, Shen, R stun duration, R glacial prison, 2 seconds to 1.5 seconds. And you have to wonder why. You really, really have to wonder why. Sejuani is strong. That's okay. Buff other junglers. Don't nerf her. Sejuani is not some grossly overpowered champion. There's a lot of champions that are very good against her right now. Why hit her like this? Doesn't make sense. Q slow decreased early. Twilight Assault, 35% to 15 to 35% scaling. This is another just what changes? I really don't understand it. Because you forget that you're affecting Shen in other areas. You're affecting top lane Shen. You're affecting, Shen's getting hit in top lane and support. And you have to... The slow, is it going to really break him? No, it's not. There's very, very few instances that you actually make use of the slow, or you absolutely need all of this slow. And then because it's the first thing that you end up maxing anyway, you're going to get there eventually, and I mean, realistically, you're looking at 10% missing at level 5, so it's not the end of the world. Swain, R explosion damage, good. Talon, W return damage decreased late. So the interesting thing here, we're going to get to the jungle item change, but Talon can still push the lane. He can still hop over walls on an extremely short cooldown. He can still escape your gank if you use 2 flashes, both ultimates, and a gap closer. He can still do all of that. He can still steal your Wraiths, level 1. He can still 100 to 0 you with 1 item. He can still go from mid to bottom lane in 3 seconds. He can still... I mean, what can he do? What can he do? What can he do? I mean, you can have Lulu and Zillion on the same team trying to speed someone up and they can't catch this piece of shit. Anyways, Wukong, E-base damage... This is it. This is the Volley Bear nerf. 65 to 245 scaling to 65 to 205. How about you give this champion a passive? How about that? How about you just rework him at this point? Who lost in Silver 3 that decided that Wukong needed to be nerfed? No competitive. He's not viable in competitive. Even at the high end of the ladder. I don't care about his win rate. Okay? God, what is this? Oh, good. Zoe's next. W base damage decreased late. W damage ratio decreased. Okay, 75 to 255. All right, so this is noticeable. All right, this is definitely noticeable, and this is noticeable. So they are taking a great deal of damage off of her W. The really cool thing for competitive players is it's awesome that her W isn't why she's being picked. It happens to be this obnoxiously big bubble, a Q, and then the fact that she one-shots you from, 2,000 range away. That's basically why she's being picked right now. So, while this change is nice, I think it's a reasonable, balanced change. It's not going to prevent Zoe from being S tier. Zoe will remain S tier with these changes, especially because of the early ranks, and you think about what that means for laning phase and whatnot. Zoe's still going to be an S tier pick. Items, jungle items, Hunter's Talisman. If you have the most individual total gold on your team, lane minion kills will grant 10 less gold. This penalty is removed upon completion of an enchantment, or this penalty is removed upon completion of an enchantment on a skirmisher. What? Oh, if you complete... Wait, what? Jungle funneling tends to be a very passive and unengaging strategy, largely rooted in avoiding conflict. This is subverting a lot of the normal laning patterns, so we're looking to significantly nerf the strategy. Why? We'll be pursuing cleaner system solutions to the problem in the preseason, but for now we're just trying to What do you mean the preseason? What? Shouldn't take 4 or 5 months. What? I'll let that speak for itself. Alright, mid-patch updates, teleport. Cooldown increased. Base cooldown, 300 seconds to 360 seconds. Cancel cooldown, 200 seconds to 240 seconds. Alright, so, one of the interesting things here is 60 seconds is big. The problem is that it only impacts the first teleport. Every subsequent teleport after that is not really impacted. There's very, very few instances where you are using teleport off cooldown. There is more that goes into teleport than just having it up. Because of this, obviously, there's going to be some more timing windows, but people are just going to learn how to play around this. Is it a reasonable nerf? I don't know how to feel about it. Obviously, champions that have ways of getting back up to top lane or being able to conserve their teleport, like Shen, Tom Kench, but Tom's not going to have competitive usage, or people that use Spellbook. Champions that can actually get away with using Spellbook up in top lane, like this. Or they don't... Well, they like this change because their teleport is used situationally. Mid lane, this hurts quite a lot. I think that mid lane, this hurts a lot more than top lane. But for the most part, I think that it's going to still be reasonable. But it does incentivize certain champions in solo queue to take combat summoners, or people that were going to go the inspiration tree to just go for the spellbook and then use the spellbook so that you can gain access to the ignite or the exhaust, switch into teleport when necessary, and then have the teleport ready later on in the game when you don't want to be grouped up with your team and when you want to be splitting. So that's all I have to say there. Rune's Conqueror, bonus attack damage decreased 10 to 35, scaling to 6 to 35. That's fine. Ghost Poro is now inactive. Don't care. Zombie Ward. This is really big. This is massive for champions like Bard. It's massive for champions like Pyke. It's massive for any roaming support that can clear out vision very quickly and that have the ability to deter an opponent. An opponent won't just run up to them. For instance, if you think about Soraka, if Soraka's trying to clear vision, her auto attack is so terrible, and she doesn't have any real way of scaring off the opponent, that if she gets interrupted while trying to kill a ward or trying to kill a pink ward or control ward, they can just actually run at her and she's forced to run away and concede it. But other champions like Zyra, like Bard, like Pyke, whatever, they actually have a little bit more threat inside of their kits and obviously the damage that they can exert. And so champions like that are able to take Zombie Ward and extremely heavy roaming supports are really, really going to like this. And I think that this change is really, really, really good. Zombie Wards now only spawn from enemy wards killed, not also friendly wards. This is good. I always thought that the friendly ward thing was a little bit busted, but I think that update is really, really cool. Cursor update, I think that all the cursors look really cool. I don't know why, but I'm thinking of Zelda right now. Champ select, this is fine. Upcoming skins, let's take a peek. This looks like something out of Avengers. Oh, no, like Doctor Strange, right? I'm thinking of Doctor Strange movie, the ending. Okay, so a Draenei, I don't even know. A Draenei had sex with Warwick. All right, that's what I'm getting from that. I can't click out of it. All right, and then the Samsung. That looks like a guy. What? That looks like a guy. You know what I'm thinking of right now? I'm thinking of Twilight Breaking Dawn. You know, like the last battle or something. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of. God. I can't get over this. I mean, Gnar just looks awesome. Gnar is great. He knows he's the best. Look at him. You just want to buy Gnar. You don't want to buy it. No, you don't. Look, what is that in the background? You want to buy that. That's a mount. That's a rare mount. I don't know what to say about... Is this Ezreal? Why isn't his hair white? What? I feel like his hair should be white with this skin. Why is it black? I'm done. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed the patch 8.14 notes rundown. That's pretty much it. So, to recap, Aatrox, I don't know what they're doing. Fizz, whatever. Jinx, whatever. Karma, whatever. Sion, whatever. Twitch, whatever. Ahri buff is noticeable, but it's not going to make her competitively viable. Cassiopeia buff, noticeable. Corki is one of the biggest buffs, actually, in this entire patch. E-base damage. Oh, actually, did I skip over this? E-base damage and resistances reduction per stack increase. This is massive. This is absolutely gigantic, especially because Corki But you have to remember that with the funneling strats being nerfed and whatnot, we're going to eventually see more mid laners coming back. Corki fares well into a lot of the current mid lane matchups right now, and his sustain and just the way that he can scale is obviously obnoxious. So definitely he might be coming back. Nasus doesn't matter. Elise getting a ruby crystal, that is noticeable. I don't think that it propels her back into the meta. Pantheon doesn't really matter. Rek'Sai, noticeable, but like I said, the tank junglers that exist right now give Rek'Sai a hard time. The other S-tier junglers right now that exist also can give Rek'Sai a hard time, but I also think that they fit into some of the mid lane and top lane 2v2s a bit better than Rek'Sai does. Sivir doesn't really matter. Vel'Koz, one of the best buff of the patch. This is actually a perfect nerf. Dr. Mundo. Viktor, I mean, I don't know what to say anymore. Vayne, Vi don't matter. Rakan, okay. Sejuani, Shen, Swain, good. Talon, I don't know what they're doing there. Zoe is balanced. Wukong is Volibear 2.0, so that's pretty much it. All right, and I will see you guys for the next patch 8.14 rundown.